everyone. Welcome to TSP Weekly. This is your tech startup podcast for Wednesday, August the 20th, 2014. Today we are back recording at the Center for Entrepreneurship here at Conestoga College. Nice to be back at home base, or what has been home base for most of our recordings here. My name is Darren Conley. I'm a local tech entrepreneur here in Kitchener-Waterloo. And with me, as always, is my co-host, fellow tech entrepreneur, Stephen Campbell. How are you today, Stephen?
I'm good, Darren. Continuing our unplugged segment from the beginning of our last podcast, I have some reporting to do. I went to the Adventurers Guild.
This is the shop that lets you play board games.
Yep.
A cafe, I guess.
A cafe,
shop, but yeah.
So they were, as we talked with Mark a little bit, they weren't the Rockstar Cafe. They were the Adventurers Guild Cafe.
Right.
You can thank me later, Mark, for that plug. So it was really neat. We took my wife and my two boys, and it was $15 to play all day.
Okay.
$5 for each, my wife and I, and then the kids were $2.50 if you're under 11.
Okay.
They had a menu of some stuff. We got a plate of hummus and veggies to dip in as we were playing some board games.
Nice.
They also had like a snack plate of like gummy worms and sour thingy-bajobbers, and it was a big bowl of candy for $7. We did the hummus and vegetables for $7.
I was going to say hummus
some really
and
neat
gummy
sandwiches.
worms. I don't know. Yeah. Okay.
So it was really neat. So they had a big blackboard that they had painted and put the menu on. It was fairly full. We ended up spending about $26 in food. Okay. And $15 in entry fee.
Did you stay for long?
We stayed for a couple hours, I'd say. We played a board game with the trains, which is new.
Sure.
So it was a little bit of learning curve to us.
Ticket to Ride?
Ticket to Ride, yep.
Yeah, I played that one.
Yep. So there was another table playing the same game, and the owner that was in I don't know his name, but he came over and showed us how to play, helped us set up the board game. So it was really neat as a restaurant guy to watch how they were doing it, because I was thinking about table times and turns and how long it took them to greet the table, or these restaurant terms. Yeah. And it was just him and a couple dudes running it, and it was pretty busy. So yeah, I would definitely go back. It was a good night of entertainment, and not tech at all. It was the reverse of that. It was unplugged, so it was really neat.
Right. That's cool. My thought is, when I hear that, when you told me how much you were paying to play, is, it would be very easy to play at home for relatively free.
Absolutely.
And have whatever food's available in my fridge. But, I guess a night out is a night out too, right?
Yeah, it's like going to a movie. You can watch a movie and have your own popcorn, but going out and being in public. And so it's like many wives that I've dined with, or my wife and your wife. I think you told me this story. Is where I'm going with this.
Oh, I thought you were talking about you've had many wives for a second there. I was getting confused.
As she walks to the table when she's eating dinner, she's looking at everybody else's meal.
Yeah.
See what she wants to eat.
Right.
So
and at this place you can look at other people's games.
Yeah. What's everybody else playing? So,
nice.
Yeah, it was fun.
Well, listen, let's introduce our guest. We have joining us today Barb Fennessy, or should I say Barbara or Barb? Can I call you Barb?
You can call me Barb. That's great.
Okay, excellent. We have Barb Fennessy from the Center for Entrepreneurship here at Conestoga College. Her official title is
Executive Dean for Entrepreneurship and Applied Research.
Okay. That sounds much more prestigious than anything I could have made up on my own. That's excellent. How are you today, Barb?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. We're very happy to have you here, because we've kind of been making use of your space for so long.
Good.
And it's nice to have someone who actually runs the space here to share with us your experience.
I'm glad you're making good use of it.
Yeah, thank you. We want to dive into a little bit of tech news here. The first thing we're going to talk about is another one of these apps that has been created for parents to monitor what their kids are doing. We've had a few that we've featured on past podcasts that kind of allow parents to monitor social media posts, what they're putting up on Instagram, who's liking them on Facebook, that sort of thing.
Right.
This app is a lot more simple, and at least in the mind of, I think, most teenagers, maybe a lot more scary. So the name of the app is called Ignore No More, and the basic functionality of this app is the mother, or I guess the article discusses it in terms of the mother and a child, but there could be other uses as well. But for the sake of example, the mother can, at any time, lock their child's phone altogether and leave only the ability to dial 911 for an emergency or to call your mom, and that's it.
911, what's your emergency? My mom locked my phone on me.
Maybe, you never know, right? So I'm assuming, the parent has to install this on their child's phone as well as on their own to make this whole thing work. But the idea is if mom is calling the teenager, or sending text messages and getting nothing in response, this is the way to kind of force that response. You cannot ignore your mom anymore.
Or she'll lock your phone.
She will lock your phone, and then you have no other choice but to call her because she will not unlock it until that happens, right?
Right.
Right.
So, a lot of the articles I've seen about this particular app, they're, kind of promoting it with this tongue-in-cheek kind of banter about, it's a sneaky mom app or, a way to really up the angst of your teenager in, dealing with their smartphones. I don't have teenagers. I know you do, Stephen.
Yeah, I'm getting close.
Yeah.
Yep,
Do
10,
they have
13.
their own smartphones?
So they're not on the phones yet, but they're on all kinds of texting platforms and iPods and iPads and stuff like that. They each have their own computer.
Okay.
So they're definitely texting and not tweeting yet, but...
And what about yourself, Barb? Do you have any kids in this
my
age?
children are in their 20s, so they're past the teenage stage, but they grew up with phones.
Okay.
And I think as a mother who's gone through this phase of becoming the digital age,
Right.
I think what we look at is, we used to control things like how many hours of television children could watch or how many games they could play on their computer.
Right.
And now young people are spending so much time on the phone. It is where they interact with the world, where they watch TV, where they listen to music. It's no longer just about the phone calls with friends. It's their entertainment center.
Right.
So they are spending a lot of time on the phone.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a way for parents to say, I need to ensure that my kids aren't hanging out all day on the phone. And in fact, there may be some moments in time when we really do need to reach them.
It's true. It's true. But let me ask you this. If this was 10 years ago, and I'm just remembering back myself, so your kids might have been using, a desktop computer to be playing games in their spare time or
Right.
Or watching TV. Would you have thought it would be a good idea to install a device that the parent has to enter a lockout code before they can turn on the television or before they can make use of their computer? Or is it too much control being given to the parent over their child's ability to access these kind of things? Or
Well, I think it's a matter of looking at the situation. I think in general, it's one thing to say, oh, we should control things. It's another thing to say, I've got a kid who spends a lot of time on the computer. And so therefore I need to scale that back, or I need to make sure that he's doing his homework and not playing games.
Right.
So between 6 and 7, I want to make sure homework's happening, and rather than stand over his shoulder, I can shut that down.
Right.
And that's my control mechanism to help ensure that it is in fact homework on the screen
Right.
and not, Facebook.
Right.
It's an interesting point you make about control. I, with my 13-year-old just getting into technology and starting to do some texting with friends and girls at 13, my wife and I were let him know that we would be monitoring his chat. And that at any time, if I requested his phone, he would be giving it to me, and I would be reading his content. And we did that for a little while, and I was actually getting a copy on my phone of his texts and his activities. So if he said anything, I would read it immediately. That got old very quick because I don't want 400 poop icons on my texting. So it was that. It wasn't. There was no drug deals going down. It was poop, poop,
I'm
poop.
happy to hear that.
And so they're just back and forthing with each other. So I immediately got out of that. And I was talking to my mother, and she made a good point. She says, when you were a kid and you started to talk on the phone with your friends, we weren't recording you. We weren't listening to you.
Right.
We respected your privacy. And I think it's important to help build a 13-year-old young man's life or his personality or his, help build him up. And
sense of trust.
His sense of trust and privacy is important. So we stopped reading his texts. And the point I'm trying to make, I think, is just because technology allows you to do something, you don't always need to do it. So that's what we did. We could read his texts, and we thought that we should or had to, but we don't. And we don't anymore.
Right.
So with this app, like bringing it back to this, the sneaky mom, I think if you have to lock your son or daughter's phone to get a response, there's a bigger issue than the technology going on. It's the relationship that is there.
Right.
If I don't respond to my wife's text immediately, it's because I have something going on. She's important to me. I will, as soon as I can, respond to it. But she doesn't need to lock my phone because I haven't responded to her.
Right. Yeah, and I completely see where you're coming from there, Stephen. My kids are 4 years old and 6 months old. I don't know what's going to be the case by the time that they're old enough to be using any of this stuff. My son already makes use of the iPad, but
Google Glass.
Maybe, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I have to monitor virtual worlds or something when they hit their teenage years or something. But
You have to step into the holodeck to talk to them.
It's possible. It's possible. But I agree that, in a way, this is, I think there are some useful kind of use cases for a thing like this, but I think it's probably a lot more kind of emotionally healthy to, train your children to have good boundaries in their technology use, because they're going to have to carry those skills into adulthood when you're no longer able to lock out their phones anymore, right?
It's almost like this is your out to me.
Right.
It's an interesting concept, but in reality, I don't know that I'd really use it that often.
Right.
It's more of a fear or a protection thing, I think.
This Is Your Out, by the way, for those who don't know what we're talking about, is another app. We were supposed to have the founder of it on our podcast a few weeks ago, but he had to cancel on us. So
yeah, there was a death in the family, so
right.
We're reaching out to him again, see if we can get him back on.
Yeah, we'll see if we get him on. He's got an interesting app. But anyway, that's a story for another podcast. Let's move on to the next article here, guys. This is something, it's not super fancy, but an interesting kind of twist on phone security. So this idea of having a dynamic PIN to unlock your smartphone. The app here is called, I think it's just called Dynamic PIN, from what we can see in the article here. So typically, when you're unlocking your phone, a lot of people have something where they're entering a passcode, 4 digits, or maybe it's a certain pattern you're tracing out on a grid of dots or something like this to unlock your phone if it's locked. The idea with a dynamic PIN is that you're entering a different thing every time, but it's the same. How should we say it? Formula, yeah. Let's put it that way. So let's give an example. So say your formula to unlock your phone is A plus B minus C. Every time you turn on your phone screen, your lock screen, and you're going to unlock it, it will give you a bunch of values. A equals 50, B equals 30, C equals 15, D, E, F, G, et cetera, et cetera.
All the way through most of the alphabet. And those each time are randomly generated, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like every time A is 50. It's every time
right.
It's different.
And that's the whole point. It has to be different every time. And then you're entering the proper calculation of whatever that algorithm is to unlock the phone. So the first time, you might be punching in 35. The next time you might put in 24. And only you know what the formula is. It's not displayed on the screen. And the idea is if somebody is looking over your shoulder when you're unlocking the phone, they can't kind of memorize your 4-digit PIN or look at the pattern you're tracing.
Right.
They're going to just see you entering a few different numbers, but they're going to be different numbers every time, and they're not going to be able to figure out exactly what's going on. So a bit of a step up from typical, phone lock situations. Now, I'm going to say this at the risk of anybody stealing my phone from me at some point, but I don't even have a locking mechanism on my phone. I just swipe the screen and off I go. I don't know. I don't have any pictures that can be used to blackmail me or anything stored on my device, so I'm not super concerned.
Yeah, when you first brought this article to my attention, my first thought was, I need more secrets. Because I don't care if you
I guess,
get
I
my
mean, you
phone,
have
I have to buy a new one, I guess.
You have your contacts and your email, and if people wanted to mess around with your life, I suppose they could if they took your phone. I don't know why anybody would want to with my life. My life's not that exciting, but...
Well, and again, what's the application? If your phone is for personal use...
Right.
Chances are most of us are not going to worry about a sophisticated security system.
Right.
If we have some confidential information, if we're dealing with work records and private information and you wanted to protect that, I can see that perhaps you might want to have some security on your phone.
Yeah,
Sure.
I've got a high score of over 100 on Flappy Bird. I'd be pretty pissed if someone came in and beat that on
You
me.
got to protect that. That's true.
I don't, actually. I hate Flappy Bird. Disclaimer. I probably haven't gotten over 10 on it.
I don't think anyone's got over 100.
No,
I stopped believing you as soon as you said
Didn't
that.
we see the kids' video where they were the reaction and they were doing it? And
Maybe we did
was
on
fun.
Kids React.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
that's true.
somebody got
I think this is really just to prevent the looking over your shoulder possibility
Right.
of somebody sneaking, and then they're going to have to get your phone away from you. That's the other thing. I mean, most people are kind of attached to your phone. Mine is always either in my pocket or, right beside me or in my hand. So people would have to physically steal it somehow, and then they'd have to have looked over my shoulder, and it seems like too much work for very little payoff, in my opinion. But if it's a business, I can understand.
Maybe it's going to reduce theft.
Maybe, yeah, that's true.
Less likely people are going to pick up a phone that they can't get into.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Or at the very least, they'll be frustrated when they do try to get into it after they've stolen it, and that saves your stuff. But at the very least, I thought it was a neat idea. I find, just as a general principle, I often think, we've kind of done everything we could do in this particular area, and for unlocking phones, I figured we've pretty much got that licked, but. Here's the next step up, and it seems to offer some value.
It makes sense to me. I often do some computer support for mom and dad, and when I'm there, it's always password stuff. And so they have their Wi-Fi password protected in the
Right.
house even. So, it's like every time my kids go to get on, they have to use the password. So
Right.
like the iPads are passworded. And I've just recently gone to unlocking my phone too. So I don't want to turn it on and put the password in every time because it's just me.
Right.
And I guess it's this losing it or having it stolen is I'm fortunate enough to not have had that experience. So maybe that'll be a reality awakener for me if it ever happens. But I don't lock anything anymore. And I said to my mom and dad, "Why is everything locked?" Like from my son, when he comes over, so you can hide the iPad. So
Sure.
And he always uses it, and then he goes to them and says, "What's the password?" So they now all know it. So everybody knows these passwords. So it's almost a futile exercise.
I think at the very least that the functionality has to be there because there's liability issues for the software makers. They don't want to get
Downloading,
sued if
yep. And
you
all
say
the
there was no way to
purchases.
lock out my bad people from using my device. But maybe this kind of brings up a bigger issue, and maybe this is too big a can of worms to open on a podcast here at this point. But the whole issue of shouldn't my devices have some way to know who I am without me having to go through these hoops of memorizing multiple passwords and working out algorithms to, unlock these things. And I know there's, we are seeing devices now that take thumbprint scans or maybe a retinal scan with the cameras, but it hasn't really kind of caught on in the mainstream. It hasn't become the mainstream way of doing things. We're
maybe
still
it's-
memorizing passwords. Yeah.
Maybe it's a pricing factor. You put these things in place. Maybe it raises the price of the devices. And
Yeah, that's possible.
It's interesting because I have the fingerprint scanner, and it's not that a fact that I have to put in a code or that I have to do the fingerprint scanner because it's very easy. It's just one extra step.
Right.
When you hit your button on your phone, then you have to slide it to turn it on or to, then you have to do the fingerprint scanner. Then you can get into your app. So it's like 3 steps.
Right.
So I just want 2. And
Yeah.
if I could have one, that would be good.
And on a device that you're looking at, 150 times a day, or I can't remember the statistic, but it's a very large number of times that we're pulling out our devices,
and
unlocking them, and watching
Especially
them, right?
those teenagers that mom wants to control.
Right.
There's a lot of unlocking going on there.
Well, I wonder here if this, maybe you bring up teenagers, maybe this dynamic phone unlocking thing can be an educational tool, right? If they have to do a math equation every time they unlock their phone, right? Suddenly their math scores will get better, hopefully, and off you go, right? All right, let's move on to our last article we want to talk about here. A new startup called GetSet. They are claiming to, well, at least their goal is to reduce college dropout rates. They have an app that, from what I can see in this article here, is really more about building a social community on college and university campuses. But I guess the gimmick of it is they're using natural language processing to kind of collect your data and connect you with other people that are either helpful to you or could be useful to you as social contacts.
I was surprised in reading the article. It talked about one of the main reasons, and this is a U.S.-based article in Company, I believe. It was talking about U.S. schools.
Right.
But one of the main reasons for kids to drop out of college, I didn't realize, was social. It was the highest one, like 40 some odd percent. And I thought it would be financial, and that was down its third place at 16%. So kids that aren't connecting socially, finding friends, fitting in, those are the main reasons that kids are dropping out of college, which was a surprise to me.
Yeah, it surprised me as well. And the actual numbers here, and just like you said, 54% of college dropouts say they're driven out by social factors, not feeling like they fit in, not making friends. A third, or 30%, almost a third, are leaving for financial reasons, and then it was only 16% for academic reasons. I think I could understand this. It was surprising when I read it, but I can imagine my first year in university. I've moved possibly to a new city. I'm living with a whole bunch of strangers. If I feel out of place, unaccepted, unwelcomed, if I can't really get a core group of friends that I can hang out with on campus, I'm not going to want to stick around that place, whether I'm doing well in my classes or not. Right?
Yeah, you don't care if your Get and Set are working if you don't have anybody to hang out after class and you don't feel comfortable. That makes sense.
So I can see this definitely being an issue. Now, when they're saying dropout, I wonder if this is even, are they including students who drop out of one college in order to go to another one? Because that's a little bit different than dropping altogether. Like when we talk about reducing dropout rates, we're thinking of reducing the amount of students that are leaving post-secondary education altogether. And I think when we're talking about social factors, I could see, well, I'm going to stop going to this particular college, but I'm going to go to this other one instead that I already have some friends at and connect with people there. One way or the other, though, I think it's a very noble goal.
I wish we had somebody we could ask about that question.
I don't know.
Well, I don't think they clarify in the article. I mean, there's no question that, especially among first-year students, they're in a new environment. It's not just the challenges they're facing with respect to new teachers, new courses, new program. Perhaps they're living in a new place.
Yep.
New residents, new roommates.
Right.
Maybe they're new program. There's so many things that they're having to contend with.
Sure.
That is such a stress for many people. Some people thrive on it. They love it. They love to meet new people. My daughter would arrive on site somewhere and throw herself a party, and that I'll be taken care of because that's just who she is. My son, not so much. He's not going to do something like that.
Sure.
And so, especially for first-year students, I mean, that's why we have a very substantial student services area here at the college that provides lots of different socially oriented programs, orientation initiatives, plus our CSI, Conestoga Students, Inc. They do all kinds of things to engage students in social arenas because it's really important that people coming to college understand that they are part of a community, not just a classroom.
Right. And, I think part of the how should I say it? The mindset of this particular startup, of this particular application is, students these days are far less likely to attend like a social mixer kind of event and are far more likely to try to reach out through, online social networking options, if that makes sense. So especially for the students who are kind of naturally a little more shy, socially awkward, it's a lot easier for them to hop online and kind of find some people who are into the same stuff that they are than it is for them to go out to, an on-campus kind of mixer event and wander aimlessly through the room, hoping they bump into someone who might feel comfortable talking to them or vice versa. And
it's an interesting mix here too at Conestoga. Nurses and firemen and programmers and
media people. All
they're not natural blenders.
Sure.
You'll see these firemen run through the halls, and then you see the programmers scurry when the lights come on, and the nurses all dressed in bright colors in groups.
Well,
and there's not a lot of mingling happening. And
we should kind of highlight, like, this is the major kind of value proposition of this particular startup, is that you can tell the system, I'm feeling really lonely these days, or I'm really struggling with the first week in my biochem class. And according to what they claim here, then the system can match you up with, say, a second or third year student who's already taken that class and who understands what you're going through.
And has developed a solution to the problem
That's right. And they can kind of come alongside and say, listen, don't worry, man, I've been there, just survive the first 2 weeks and then things will get easier, or whatever the situation may be. If a student says, I'd like to find some people who are really into playing board games at the board game cafe, then they claim, then you can, it'll help you connect with those people with a shared interest and specifically on your campus, right?
I think there are so many people today. I mean, they've grown up with digital technology. This is the digital age, as I said earlier. And so these students are comfortable with digital communication. They're comfortable with texting to people. They're comfortable sort of orienting themselves to kind of just getting to know people and not having to put themselves out there immediately. So it provides an opportunity for people to warm up to the idea of getting to know other people and interacting with other people. And when you get to know somebody, even online, just a little bit, then when you have that face-to-face encounter, then maybe you feel a little bit more comfortable. Sure. I would suggest, though, that it's still really important for students to engage in face-to-face activities, to be part of a community. If the digital helps get that going, great. But I wouldn't want it to have the reverse effect of isolating people and keeping them in their room where they can communicate behind a door rather than getting out and interacting. So I think we have to look at this in balance.
It's not behind a door for me. It's behind an avatar or a personality or a profile picture. So you're able to be whoever you want to be, and you can present yourself as you want to present yourself. So it's a layer online that you're able to, it's some anonymity and some projection of who you want to be. And when you get into a social situation, because I grew up without having that, I've learned some social skills to be able to adapt to different social situations. And sometimes with the kids, I see that they're skilled at that online, but then when you start to talk to them, they are just, their heart is on their sleeve and they don't know how to couch things or be suggestive or nudge, nudge, wink, wink at all, or because they haven't developed those social skills in communication face to face. Whereas online, if they sit and communicate all night, I remember as a teenager
using emoticons or something.
Emoticons and my avatar and this and that. And I would get on the phone and talk to girls when I was 14 or whatever it was. And that was a scary thing. And then eventually you're talking to girls in person. And but if there was another layer where I could put up a muscle picture or a goofy smile and be whoever, and that's what I see now is that there's another layer to it that you can invent yourself. So that's the danger I see, is that you don't develop that skill set to be able to talk to people.
Well, and that skill set is fundamental to the very careers that people are coming to college and university to acquire. So, I mean, communication skills are essential. And yes, it's great to have digital communication skills.
Right.
If that's part of the package, awesome.
Right.
But not to the exclusion of these other skills. Social skills
Right.
are very, very important. And the fact that people drop out because they don't have them,
Yeah.
well, all the more reason why we want to ensure we're helping them to develop them.
Of course.
So face-to-face becomes critical
Sure.
to helping people feel comfortable and learning the practice of interacting with others. Maybe we need to find some really neat opportunities to do that, and again, through some of the social activities that the Students' Council organizes,
Yeah.
some of the college orientation activities, some of that happens, but
Yeah.
it's a good thing to be focusing on an ongoing basis, recognizing that there are so many dropouts and social factors are key.
No, absolutely.
It's not just the first week of classes we need to be thinking about. It's ongoing, right?
Absolutely. And I just realized I didn't actually say the name of this this app. It's called GetSet. GETSET, GetSet. And I agree. I think, the creators of this app, I'm assuming, are hoping that this will be a way to make use of online communities as a catalyst for real face-to-face social interaction. But it will be interesting to see going forward. There's still a new startup here, right? To see if their app actually facilitates real social interaction or pushes people in the other direction, like you said.
They were talking about they had some soft numbers. They thought that it reduced dropping out of college by 5 to 10%.
Yeah.
But small numbers. And they're launching it now with the University of Arizona. So they're going to have some larger numbers, 10,000 people to.
But 5 to
see.
10% to a college administration is pretty huge, right?
Sure,
If
absolutely.
they can keep an extra 10% of students enrolled that would otherwise be dropping out, and that's a big deal.
Well, at the end of the day, we're all here to achieve student success.
Absolutely.
So raison d'etre.
Yep, of course. I love the French thrown in there. You can tell we're a Canadian podcast, right?
I thought that was Latin.
Excellent. Nope. Anyway, let's put this stuff aside and talk a little bit more with Barb here. Once again, her name is Barb Fennessy. Can you say your title again, Barb?
Sure.
I'm not going to
She's the
remember at all.
Executive Dean of Entrepreneurship and Applied Research here at Conestoga College in the Center for Entrepreneurship.
Is that right?
That's correct.
Wow.
Yes.
Stephen,
Yes.
did you write that down?
No, I introduce her often, actually.
Ah, okay. Excellent. Excellent. So, Barb, Steve and I have kind of seen you around for the last few months that we've been busy here. But I feel like I really don't know much about kind of your background and where you came from and how you came to be holding this position and involved in what you're doing here. So maybe first you could just tell us what exactly it is that you do here at the
Sure.
college, and maybe we can hear a bit about how you got here afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my role involves, first of all, developing entrepreneurial initiatives and fostering a culture of entrepreneurship across the culture, helping to do that. So in order for that to happen, obviously that means engaging students, engaging faculty, engaging administrators, and engaging support from the broader community. So we've been really fortunate at this college because we have some phenomenal supporters. Financial institutions like the Royal Bank and Scotiabank and the Bank of Montreal have all been really terrific in terms of providing equipment for our classrooms and supporting program development and guest speakers and mentors for our students. Great West Life for this incubator facility that we are sitting in.
Wow.
They've been phenomenal.
They're getting a Christmas card this year.
They are. And, one of the fellows that's very well known in this community, Mike Stork, because of the tremendous number of good things that he does, in addition to chairing our Entrepreneurial Advisory Council here at the college. He's involved in the Accelerator Center. He's involved extensively in the investment community, and he's been a philanthropist who's been a significant contributor to our center as well. So we're fortunate to have tremendous support, very, very widely across the community.
So I'm assuming there are some initiatives that the
Yes.
college is undertaking that you're heading up. Yeah?
Absolutely. So, one of the things that we've wanted to do is ensure that we're very accessible to all students.
Right.
So, for example, with Scotiabank, what we've done is we've set up a program called Startup Students. And that's a series of workshops we run every semester. It's open to any student, any age, any program, part-time, full-time, CE, daytime. They can come in and they can learn a series of workshops about how to get a business off the ground. Just some fundamentals. How do you get started? How do you get financing? How do you write a business plan? How do you network? Who do you talk to? What's this market research stuff all about?
Sure.
So that's been a very successful program. We've had several hundred students coming through just looking for that kind of brief introduction to entrepreneurship.
Sure.
Through Bank of Montreal, we offer a consulting service. So if students are just wanting to come in and ask questions about their business, or if they're working on a business plan and they want some in-depth consultation, then we can offer that to them.
Do you have consultants on campus here that offer those services? Okay,
we do, and generally we ask students to make an appointment because they're not here all the time. They come in as they're needed, and we determine which consultant we should bring in based on the nature of the business.
Right.
We have, again, supported by Scotiabank, an international office that where we provide business services for students who are new to Canada, and we make that available to people who are new Canadians, immigrants in the community who want to learn about starting a business as well. We have a program we run called Technology-Enabled Social Innovation, and that's supported by the Ontario government, Ministry of Economic Development and Innovation. And Stephen, you were a student in that program, and actually one of our stars in that program with your app Razor.
That's right. I really enjoyed it.
That's a program where we bring teams of students together from various disciplines to create an app for a social good.
Okay. And is there a cost to a program like that?
Again, that is sponsored by the province of Ontario, so there's no cost to any of the participants for that program.
Wow.
So we have a number of free initiatives, and what I'm really excited about that we're launching this year is an initiative called E@C. We're bringing sets of 3 modules, 1-hour modules across as many programs in the college as we possibly can, integrating them right into the classroom activities so that they're minimally engaged in entrepreneurship, but just enough to whet their appetite so that they can access all of these various free services in the center. We have a very successful small business ventures program that is a post-grad initiative that we launched last year, again, with support from Royal Bank. In fact, for every student that graduates from that program, the Royal Bank gives every one of them a $1,000 award.
Wow.
So we can take up to 20 students in that program. We can hand out up to $20,000.
Wow.
That helps them just kind of, get things going in their business.
Sure. There are not many programs where you get paid to do it,
no,
right?
it's a wonderful initiative, and the support from our donors, it's just tremendous.
And I worked alongside some of those teams as we were doing our app Razor for the Tessie program.
Right.
Some of the small business venture program people were working on their ideas, and that was really neat to see. And that was that community and the environment here in the Center for Entrepreneurship that really got everybody excited about, what are you doing and what are we doing? And when there's a lot of teams in here, everybody building on their own ideas, that's really feeds the excitement. Right. So that was really neat.
Sure.
So while we were doing the Tessie workshops, they were ongoing and here every day, and so we would pop in and out.
It's an exciting environment to be working in. We're going to tackle a tough one this coming year because it's needed. There's a need for advanced manufacturing technology, whether it's something really small in terms of hardware or something very significant, say food processing equipment.
Sure.
We need startups in manufacturing to receive support. So we created an initiative with the Ontario Centres of Excellence. We're doing this in partnership with the Accelerator Centre, Communitech, and Innovation Guelph. We're going to pool all of our mentor resources to give these people the very best we can possibly access through our pooled team.
Wow.
And we're going to provide some training initiatives. We're going to provide mentoring and consulting for these individuals. And we have a new Center for Smart Manufacturing here at the college with some very exciting equipment like 3D printers and robotics labs, sensors labs. And so those startups who wouldn't have this kind of equipment will be able to access that equipment through our Center for Smart Manufacturing as participants in our program.
Wow.
So lots of really, we've been around for just a few years.
Right.
We officially launched about a year ago, and we have some phenomenal programs that are running, and we're really, really excited about how engaged students and faculty and the community is in entrepreneurship.
Now, do you have any kind of student success stories, or any kind of interesting kind of people you've seen go through any of these programs? You mentioned Stephen already, so excluding Stephen.
We've had, what's really neat about the college environment is that we have such a comprehensive range of programs.
Right.
Our college really touches every kind of sector you can imagine.
Right.
Firemen, nurses, and programmers, right?
Exactly.
Like I alluded to earlier.
Absolutely. So,
and more.
We have students from every school engaged in this center. And I'll give you an example. We had a fellow who started a business as a carpenter.
Right.
And he worked through his business plan, and pretty self-directed guy, and really very entrepreneurial. Had just the right characteristics, the passion to really make this go, willing to get out and network and utilize whatever resources and networks he already had.
Yeah.
Well, within 3 months, he was contracted for the year.
Oh,
that's great.
Wow.
He surpassed his initial projections and then some.
Wow.
And just demonstrated that tradespeople,
right.
the opportunity for people in trades to go into businesses. I mean, look around at the people in construction, plumbers, electricians, carpenters, mechanics, so many different trades where people can become self-employed.
Right. Right.
So, that field alone, and that's a range of fields, but that area alone, tremendous opportunities.
Sure. And for those who, we do try to focus on technology startups a lot of times on this podcast, but it crosses over into that as well for people who can apply kind of new technology or new twists on modern technology and create something in the trades or for manufacturing. I think there are, huge opportunities for innovation in those areas for those who are kind of inclined to think along those ways, along those lines. I'm a terrible handyman, so I'm not the right person to work in that area. But
we just had the Mastercraft Awards. Is that what they're called?
Yes.
And woodworking student was mentioned in that. I don't think he won it, but he had developed a huge wooden table that was a working Nintendo Entertainment System controller, with big buttons on it. I didn't see it. I read the article on the Conestoga website.
Wow.
So he was a very meticulous. Did a really good job with it, but he wasn't really happy with the way the buttons depressed down.
Sure.
But it had all kinds of storage for video games in it, so it is kind of tech. Even though it's woodworking, he's made a tech gaming table, and everybody lined up to see it. It was the biggest hit. I guess he didn't win, but popularity was.
But that's something we really need to be paying attention to.
Sure.
Smart everything. I mean, we live in a community where tech is so entrenched. And is that ever a good thing? Because we're not just developing technology for tech companies.
Right.
We're developing technology to be utilized in every sector.
Yeah.
So whether it's manufacturing and we come up with technology solutions to enhance productivity, whether it's in gaming for kids, whether it's in other kinds of music or entertainment systems.
Yeah. Or in the trades, like we were saying.
Or in the
if you can apply technology to plumbing, or if you can apply it to doing better electrical
Smart
work.
houses.
Yeah.
You look at the advances in refrigerators, or being able to program when your stove turns on or when your heat turns on, all those, and to be able to control it remotely from your phone.
Right.
technology can be applied everywhere. And so if we can bring together this genius we have in this community, what a wealth we have of resources that can be integrated across every sector. That's the power of technology.
Absolutely. And it's exciting to hear about these programs like the manufacturing one that you talked about, where you're having so many resources and experts and organizations coming together to work for a common goal, rather than trying to compete and outdo each other. Why not pool our intelligence and our resources to create amazing things, right?
Absolutely. If you're going to build a robot, it's not about the robot; it's about what the robot can do for you.
Sure.
Like build immersive 3D content. That would be neat.
That's a whole other discussion.
Yeah, can I have 20%, Darren?
Stephen likes to throw in little winks at things that we talk about off the podcast.
That's right.
I wanted to ask Barb just a little bit about your own background as well.
Okay.
So were you involved in entrepreneurial endeavors yourself before you came on at the college here full time?
Yes, I was. I've actually been involved in developing entrepreneurship initiatives for over 20 years.
Wow.
Almost 25 years. It's a long time.
I wouldn't have guessed that you've been employed that long.
Oh, you're good. You're good.
Nice. You don't even need to send a Christmas card this year, Darren.
That's right.
That was like 10 points in the bank account.
It is one of the most exciting arenas to be working in. I mean, I've been blessed because so much of my career has been in education, but it's been in entrepreneurial initiatives in education, or it's been in community development, but entrepreneurial initiatives relating to community development.
Sure.
So, for example, I've worked in the college system here at Conestoga and in other colleges, working on entrepreneurship centers and developing those centers and developing programs in business schools. And then outside of business schools, programs for government to help redirect careers for individuals who found themselves unemployed and wanted to do something more with a career and could apply their talents to, say, a self-employment environment.
Sure.
So I've been really, really excited at sort of 20 years of exposure to all kinds of different inventors and entrepreneurs with new ideas, new applications. It's been really tremendous. I find we're getting more and more sophisticated.
See, this is what I was about to ask you, is with 20 years or 25 years of experience in this area, how have you seen things change from those, the early time when you started, developing programs for entrepreneurship and what we have here? It sounds like now there's so much more talk about startups, especially technology startups, but startups in general. We have people like Peter Thiel and other big names in Silicon Valley encouraging students to drop out of school and start businesses because, they're like, don't waste your time, just go and start in the entrepreneurship field as early as you can. Maybe they don't quite realize, the access to startup resources that colleges and universities are able to often offer to students. But
it's a different kind of debt.
But it's almost like everybody has a new business they want to start now. Was that the case when you first started working in this field?
When we started this in the early 90s in the college system, it was new to the college system, and there were not a lot of college students engaging in startups. We really sort of worked through the 90s at developing initiatives and getting ideas going and developing the fundamentals of entrepreneurship education. I also had opportunities to develop some international initiatives. For example, I developed an organization, a Center for Entrepreneurship with the East Cape Technicon in South Africa. And that was really focusing on micro enterprise. But it wasn't so different from what we were doing here in the 90s, where a lot of the startups were micro enterprises.
Right.
What's different now is they're not so micro. They're really... We're seeing a lot of good ideas. We're seeing sophisticated planning. And for those who think that, it may or may not be a good idea to go to school, well, what I see is the ability of students to take what they've learned in college and university, because we work, our Small Business Ventures program, we have several university graduates who come here to apply their knowledge.
Sure.
And they can take what they've learned, or they can take just the state of maturity, the readiness that they're at. They're ready to do it now. They're more emotionally mature. They're more tapped into a network. They have a better sense of what they want to do. So that time in school has many purposes.
Sure.
One of them being academic, one of them being social, to develop themselves and their emotional intelligence, etc.
It takes a certain amount of emotional and social maturity to be able to make a pitch to investors, or to be able to, hire a sales team, or do a marketing
and confidence.
plan.
The more we are in these situations, the more learning we acquire. It's all part of building who we are and the confidence we have in ourselves.
Sure.
So I see the students who come into our post-grad program, the Small Business Ventures, they are so ready. They're the ones that have thought through this. They've had the benefit of a university education or a college education, and they have a better sense of what they want to do. And so they're ready to do that business plan, and it is helpful for them to lay it out and understand the financial implications of what they're going to do, and the market research that's important to ensure they do before they make investments.
Sure.
And to have the capacity to do that market intelligence because they've taken a course in market research and really understand what they should be looking for, and they don't just run out there and dive into something where they might spend a lot of money on the wrong track.
Right.
That's one of the things I've really enjoyed as a mature student coming back to school is seeing things through my eyes versus some of the youth's eyes. And we'd be in some classes and we'd be talking about developing an app for renting a car. And then the teacher would say, has anybody rented a car before? And I'm the only hand that goes up that says, yes, I've rented a car before. So I understand that system. And the 20-year-olds in there that have never rented a car and have now had their first credit card or whatever their situation is, they're not stifled from the saddle that I have to wear because I know what the process is and I know about damages. And if you get a ticket with a rental car, I just had that life experience. But so it was neat for me to be a part of a team where none of them had ever rented a car. So there was no, it was like Bruce Lee teaching karate. He says, if you know karate, I don't want to take you. But if you've never taken anything, you're a blank slate, then I want to take you because then whatever I impress on you is fresh.
Sure.
So it was really neat to see that fresh look with a little bit of, that wouldn't work, or you do need a driver's license and you do need a credit card. Or, what? A credit card to rent a car? What are you talking about? So that was really neat.
I had a rental car that got towed in San Francisco one time, which was not a fun experience.
I know how to get you out of a parking ticket in San Francisco.
Yeah, I've heard there's an app for that, actually. Listen to one of our previous episodes and you'll hear all about it. I wanted to ask Barb, so you've been involved in entrepreneurship as well, right up through the emergence of social media as a marketing tool.
Yes.
How do you think that has affected the ability of startups now to kind of get known or get seen, or to be able to do some cheap marketing that might not have been possible in the mid 90s or the early 90s? Back then, have you seen much of a shift from then till now when it comes to that?
I'm seeing a shift. I wouldn't say that the businesses are diving into social media. I would say that they definitely recognize, especially if they are taking the marketing courses that we're offering. We think it's a valuable tool. Students that maybe at one point would have looked at just a website are recognizing that it's really important to stay in touch, to be actively communicating, to have an interactive exchange. And the benefit really for social media is that they can invite people, they can invite their customers to interact with them in real time. And have conversations with them. So it's not just something that gets posted on a website. They can truly engage with their customers. And so they're developing relationships. It's not just a brochure on a website, an electronic brochure. They're developing relationships, and that is the key to successful businesses. You can have a lot of money and you can have a great idea, but you have to develop the relationships with your customers to be successful.
And I also saw one of my takeaways from the GetSet app, the third news article we talked about, was the fact that they have identified that youth today wants immediacy, that they don't want to set up an appointment to talk to a school counselor about an issue they're having at school next Wednesday. They want to talk about it right now and have a response right now. So the social network that these guys are building enables them to do that immediately. And that's just what you're talking about. Is it has to be now, and it can't be, it's not a dentist appointment. They want that immediacy. And that's the youth now, is with all the technology, they get it immediately. And that's what these apps we're seeing. Look, if you don't respond to me immediately, I'm locking your phone.
Here's
true. Yo, I want to yo you immediately. If you don't respond to my text, it turns into a phone call.
Right.
So it's all this immediacy that is really being cranked up. And I think my kids want it. They want it, and they want it now.
It's true.
And it's always given to them through technology.
Bringing it back to kind of startups and entrepreneurship, I almost find it astounding to think about, say, 30 years ago, if I was to try to do a business startup and be seen, that meant taking out a newspaper ad. That meant paying to develop a TV commercial, or paying for a radio commercial, or doing a mass mailing of brochures.
Which is very, very expensive.
Yeah, and it's expensive because probably 95% of the people receiving them don't care about what
20 years ago, they might have cared a little more than now, but now they go straight into the bin.
So I think that it really highlights how living in the digital age, or the age of digital connectedness, I can't pronounce that word for some reason right now, and the age of immediate responsiveness has facilitated this explosion that we're seeing in entrepreneurship and in startup endeavors, because the barrier to entry now is much... there's far less of a barrier to entry, I guess, is the best way to put it.
We have a graduate who started up a company, Echo Sims, Jeff Horst, in the community.
Yeah,
we had Jeff on as a guest.
You had him on. Now, awesome. We bring him in to teach the course in one of our workshops in marketing, and including social media, because he can really relate how the very success of his business is because so many companies are understanding the power of social media and the power of good marketing, and why it's so vital to a startup to have that as part of the plan.
Yeah, and his EcoSims has sort of grown into Mere Social now, which is helping businesses turn likes into dollars, and educating them on what that process is and when they should get in and out. And so that's what he's doing now too. So that's really neat.
You can hear all about it on our, I wish I could tell you what episode it is, but I don't have the numbers in front of me. But maybe 3 or 4 episodes ago we had him on, so
awesome.
you can check that out. We should start wrapping things up here. Let me just ask Barbara, before we do close, for people who want to find out more about the programs and the services that are being offered through Conestoga, where can they go? Is there a website or some online resources that people can go to check those out?
Yes, they can come to the Conestoga website, and if they look up C4E, or if they go under Student Services and look for the Center for Entrepreneurship.
Okay.
We do have a website with some of our key services, and our door is open all day long. We've got people here to talk to, students. I mentioned that we have services for immigrants in the community, new Canadians. So we'd be delighted to have people call us. Stop in, and we've got lots of great services and programs to offer.
Excellent. Good to know. I'm going to have to look up some of those myself, actually, do a little more thorough search, because I had no idea that you offered so much until you were telling us here. Well, let's wrap up for today. That's just about an hour here. Thank you, our loyal listeners, for joining us on another episode of TSP Weekly. Special thanks once again to Conestoga College for letting us use their wonderful space here in the Center for Entrepreneurship for recording. Please, if you're listening, feel free to send us your comments, your questions, criticisms, feedback, anything you want to say about what you've heard on this podcast. You can email us at feedback@tspweekly.com, or you can go to our website, tspweekly.com, and leave a comment in the post for this podcast. We have appearing next week on TSP Weekly Mr. Mike Kirkup, who is the director of the Velocity Accelerator Program.
Velocity Garage, I guess
Velocity Garage, yes.
Velocity Foundry, they have their new
Right, and there's
program.
Velocity Foundry
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, it's
We're
great.
going to have his titles all worked out by now.
We still got a week to figure it out. So he'll be coming on board next week, so please join us for that as well. So from myself, Darren Conley, from my co-host, Mr. Stephen Campbell, and our guest, Barbara Fennessy, thank you very much for joining us here today, and we'll see you all next week.